Hello.
Hello.
What's your name?
My name's Nadia Gilani.
Hello, Nadia Gilani. And where did you grow up and where do you live now?
Grew up in London and I still live in London.
Do you? Whereabouts in London did you?
I live in East London now. And I was born in East London, but I've lived all over London, north, south, and now I'm back in East.
Great. And what's been the most predominant practice of your life?
I'd probably say it's yoga. It's got to be yoga, but it's not been yoga alone. But the predominant one in the sense that it was there at the beginning and life pulled me away at times and then I've come back.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the reason initially you got into the practice of yoga?
My mum took me to a class. At a time that I was 16 and I was sort of in quite bad emotional shape at the time and, not really interested in anything, really. My life, body, school, and I think my mum had tried various means to help me and I think yoga was something that was working for her and so she took me to a class and didn't really want to go, but I think it probably changed my life in quite profound ways because that's how I found the practice, And then even though I walked out on it many times in life, I came back.
So you were like, oh, Mum, all right.
It was a bit like that, yeah.
And then something there captured you.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because it wasn't like some magical, I suppose the experience I had was probably quite magical actually, but it wasn't like some kind of like really amazing studio. It was like a zero frills community space. The teacher was, very relatable, very lovely, quite ordinary. And everybody in the place who seemed like regulars, they were all very ordinary as well. We're all very ordinary people, aren't we? I think sometimes with yoga, there's this distance that's, we think that we can't practice. I don't know, I sort of meet people a lot where they feel like the practice isn't for them. And I suppose I thought the practice wasn't for me. I just didn't know what this thing was. I didn't know what it was. And she said that, come along, I think you might find it interesting and enjoy it. And yeah, I did go in the end and it was awkward. My body didn't understand, the strange shapes. I thought everybody was looking at me. I was very self-conscious of my body and very self-conscious teenager, and quite moody. And at some point, something shifted. And it's interesting because my love of the shapes is what I think kept bringing me back, because I still love the weird and wonderful shapes that we do. That's kind of what pulled me back. And then, the magic of the connection and relationship with self, a relationship with others and all of that stuff is what you're reminded of when you come back. I can only speak for myself, but, that's the thing that you get. But I love the crane. I love all that, don't you? I mean, the strange, the twists, the binds,
What do you think?
Can't put it in words.
What do you think the love is?
Of what, of the shapes or of the
experience?
That's a really good question, actually. I think possibly, I haven't thought about this before, but I think possibly because I'd had such a strange, discombobulated, poor choice of word there, couldn't even say it, but I think I had such a difficult relationship with my body. It was like the body was there and the mind was there, bobbing around in space, mind bobbing around in space, body. And with the shapes, they were so unusual and strange and unnatural, like if you take a triangle pose or if you take, they're quite unnatural shapes. We're doing really strange things with our bodies. Feet are going one way, hips there, arm, and everything's quite specific. And the breath also, and there's just so much going on. And I think it just forced me in a good way, to concentrate and be there. And things started to align. Planets were aligning in the cosmos, probably. Body and mind were coming together. And there was a point I remember towards the end of the class, it was only an hour, and it was led, where the body disappeared. I think I wasn't so, and the mind, it was kind of, it is beyond words, isn't it? This thing that we're trying to put into words, but it was like, I wasn't so stressed out about the body anymore. And mind, the tanglement of the mind was kind of eased. And I always just think of things just when the planets are aligned, body and mind are aligned, and it doesn't last, it doesn't stay, it's like just a moment or a few moments. And that's why we practice, isn't it? To go back there again, to maybe stay there a bit longer. Yeah.
And so when I think you mentioned earlier about having this on-off relationship with yoga, as you moved through, what was that about?
I think it's because the mind won, because I think we have, as mammals, I think of myself as an animal more and more as years go on. I was talking to a friend about it recently. I think people I talk to about it find it quite funny, but I do feel like I've become more and more, I'm happiest when I'm in my primal element, when I'm just feeling really primal. And I think practice gives me that, when I just become flesh and bones and effort and sweat and breath. And for me, that's a very primal thing. Like, animals don't have the emotional intelligence that we have. That's kind of what separates us from the rest of the mammal world. And, the mind causes us problems. And I think what pulled me away was my mind, because my mum took me to the first class when I was in quite a bad emotional shape. Like I said, I had a really terrible relationship with my body. I didn't really want to eat properly. I was lying to her. It was all very dysfunctional. And it didn't cure me, overnight. And I think what pulled me away from practice was when the mind won and life got harder and messier. And, growing up is hard, and becoming an adult, and the pressures of, earning money and whatever, all the things that we go through. I think that made it hard. I think practice was up against a lot for me, and the mind won, and I would go into entanglements. And I think the philosophy, loads of philosophies, and I'm really, inspired by many, not just yoga philosophy, but it's dealing with the entanglement and the kind of the knots we get involved in our minds. The mind causes us problems. I really believe that, because I sometimes think if I didn't have a mind, would I have as many problems, Like if you look at a lion, or, it's quite basic that, and I say this with respect to the animal kingdom, they just have, they live in a very simple way. That's I think, there's so much to learn from that.
So it sounds like there's this relationship, the ongoing relationship you have with your body, that kind of in your mind, and the mind wins. What brings you back then?
It's interesting because the body, getting into the body is what helps. Stop listening to the mind. And also, like, I talked about concentration earlier. Like for me, I don't like to talk about advanced practice. I just think practice is practice. And, but if people talk about advanced poses or things like that, I don't really use that either. Even though they perhaps are. But when I'm working on a posture that's quite difficult for me, and I like to do things that are difficult for me, things that I can't really, that are just out of reach, because to get that concentration, that fierce concentration. And I'm not I really do like hand balances. They're not easy for me. And stuff that's low to the ground, not necessarily always like handstands, although that's fun. But the ones where you sort of tip yourself into them, or, because that concentration, that you have to really, it's just millimeters, isn't it? And breath and leaning and elbows and squeezing, and I don't know how to say, but I think for me, I'm so in the body, the mind can't be there.
There's something about when you're talking about those particular movements, that you have to have trust. You have to have trust that the body can, and the connection is there. And I think perhaps there's something about that. Yeah. In yourself. In your body. In your body, that it will take care of you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's so profound actually, isn't it? That the body, if you take care of the body will take care of you. I'm trying to tell myself that. Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah, I'm sort of, but you see, you can, you know, when I was writing, I mean, this is off topic slightly, but I was writing a book a couple of years ago. When I wrote my book, I would say that to myself: if I take care of the story will take care of me. You know, because you get lost, and it's the mind again. You know, I would get lost in the story. I would want to give up, and these are feelings that I've had in practice. I don't want to do it anymore. It's too much hard work. You know, and I think it came slowly, but I started to notice, and it'll be different for different people, but I think I started to notice that, wow, practice is becoming a metaphor for how I live the rest of my life. You know, when I'm pushing in practice, I'm probably doing that in other areas of my life. You know, I'm the same person. And so you get to see the things, the forcing, the trying to, you know, get the bind round when it's not happening. And I think when I'm teaching, you know, it comes from my own practice, and I think I sometimes look at what I'm bringing to practice, and then maybe thinking about maybe not the direct opposite, but thinking about, you know, if I'm bringing hardness to practice that day, maybe it's softening that's required. You know, we can learn from so many philosophies, like yin and yang is about that also, isn't it? It's about we need hard and soft, we need dark and light. They coexist, but they are also repelling and opposing each other. So there's a kind of dance, but then a mutual respect. We need both. We need hard, we need fire, we need, you know, cooling down. So it's obviously none of what I'm saying is easy, is it? But, you know, from what you're saying, it's about learning to trust and your body, sure. Yeah,
it's always learning to
that.
trust. I think there's something about learning to trust that all these things exist anyway, and they're all part of us, right? And so you're learning that there is this mind, there is this body, they exist, they can't exist without each other. And so I'm wondering if, like, the challenge is just that. The challenge is that the practice is predominantly perhaps about the mind, predominantly, but we get to experience the body, and then they exist together.
Yeah, I think the body becomes a vehicle through which to get to the mind. I think all of these practices are definitely about the mind. I think, you know, the changing states of the mind, you know, the fluctuations of the mind, these are all like translations of one of the sutras, and yoga is the stilling. But then we spend our lives, it's a life's work, isn't it? And I think it's a practice that we do for a lifetime if we want to, if we're up for it. And I think we spend our lives working out what that yoga is, what that stilling is, how we get the stilling of the changing states of the mind. Because it's not permanent, is it? And life happens, events happen that will throw us off course, unexpected. Life's unpredictable, you know, that's the beauty, joy.
I think there's something about what you said though, when you're coming into the practice with a certain awareness of yourself, and then the practice helps you to kind of help with that lens of how you see yourself and coming off. I think it's just, we have, you know, that the practice is about trying to help us to just be open and awake to things as they are, our body as our body, our mind as our mind, and then take away the associations. How do you feel that the ongoing practice has helped you with the associations you've had with your body?
That's interesting. I mean, I think it comes and goes. I think that's kind of, I think it has changed my relationship with my body, but I can't say it's permanent. I think it comes and goes, and I would say that when I've done enough physical practice in order to sit still, which comes at the end, you know, for me, it's in a better place. Yeah, the body is in a better place. Because I think it's also about feeling alive. So feeling the fibers of the body, you know, like I'm trying to create space in my body now, because this is when I start to feel alive. I can feel my muscles. And I think the physical posture, I don't know if I'm fully answering your question, but I think the physical practice is what connects me with my body and sort of makes it unimportant. And it feels good because, you know, I feel alive, I can feel. And I think that's probably common for a lot of people, whatever they do, whether they practice in the same way as me, or we all practice in our own ways, don't we? But if they're running or doing any sort of physical, I think movement is something I'm really into for mental health, or, you know, mind health, as we're going to call it, mind body. I think movement is very important. I think probably for all of us, we're animals, you know, really, even though we forget that we are. And modern life gets in the way, so we don't move as much. But I think movement is the important thing.
Yeah, I think I love this kind of like, you keep coming back to this analogy, Van, the animal quality of like, and it's almost like this sense of, I get the sense that there's this nature we're just trying to see if we can connect to, that's just beyond all the thoughts that we have about ourselves and all the shit that we tell ourselves, right? You know what I mean? And I'm wondering if the in and out of, you know, when you left yoga, because the mind took over, was there somewhere else you went that you got solace for and did other things, or is this kind of like you come back to yoga because you feel home there, but we're having this kind of relationship with it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no, I didn't have solace elsewhere. I wasn't sort of having an affair with another practice. I'm fiercely loyal, you know, in relationships and with people. And I guess I've been fiercely loyal in a way with yoga and the practice, because I've come back. But I was out in the wilderness when I was away from practice. I was at sea, and this is after years of life experience. I'm older and done some therapy, and I've kind of, you know, come out of the wilderness. I think I was running away from pain that I probably wasn't prepared to look at on the mat and through practice. It was probably too confronting, and I think it can be. I mean, it is, isn't it? Practice can be confrontational, and we are not always ready. So maybe that was what it was, and the pull towards the wilderness. And the wilderness was drinking. The wilderness was harming myself in many ways, and I don't think that kind of was coexisting very well. I mean, I did keep practicing. That's the kind of funny thing of it. It's not funny. It's tragic, but. Tragicomedy, but I was practicing and doing the things, and then eventually it would pull me away. And then I think that would get so bad, and then you come back because you think, what helped before? And you come back, and yeah, that's what
has the strength to come back increased over the years?
Yeah, I would say definitely, for sure, because I think it's years, isn't it? It's age. I think for me, the gaps get smaller between I wouldn't say going to the wilderness I don't really tend to go there a lot. I can feel when, you're going a bit, this isn't going to be helpful. And I have my ways of not running away with it. But yeah, it's definitely, the gaps get smaller between going into the sort of the darkness or whatever you want to call it. And I think consistency is a really key part of keeping that at bay. Talking to people. There's loads of things outside, like practice is for me, not something that's done in isolation, which is something that I think I did for a long time. It was just the practice and me. But actually, I think as I've got older, the years have gone by, community is huge. You know, Sangha, togetherness. I don't think practice would be enough anymore for me without other people. I think it's almost impossible. I mean, nothing's impossible, but you know what I mean? Like I think it's so important. I mean, gosh, like I think I was doing it in the past, without realizing it, going to the Shala. Because it's not just about knowing what to do, is it? It's about going and doing it with others. And you know, it could be the highlight of the day because you've had that connection, and in the morning, and I'm just going back in time here a bit into my life, and that I don't think I valued that community as much as I do now, you know, and then perhaps having a coffee with people sometimes and having a chat, and you've got that, and feeling like, because for me, I sometimes think, and this is maybe going slightly off, but not completely, because it is about relationship. For me, everything's about relationship with practice, and I think for me, I sometimes think when I've been in the dark times, or sometimes when I get low now, I sometimes think, do I even exist without the other? Do you know what I mean? I sort of start to disappear to myself. And it's because of you that I exist. I don't know if this is true, but this is the story that I have, the narrative. Relationship, you know? And I sometimes don't know who I am without a relationship with the object. And the object is, you know, you, another person, or the thing. And I suppose the object is the practice. We define who we are. We know ourselves more through the other thing. I don't know, maybe I'm getting too tangled up, but this is what I do. This is what it is, isn't it?
Beautiful. And so what have you learned over the years of practice about yourself that you'd like to share with others?
I think keeping things simple is probably the best, and doing less is plenty. Does that make sense? Should I explain? No, I think, yeah, just to actually qualify, I think for me, my default setting, which I still, you know, this is the yin yang, this is the dance I play, is all or nothing, and very much all is preferred over nothing. But actually, that's what I mean about, you know, more is not better. I just think sometimes less is plenty. Sometimes just sitting, being with yourself, as excruciating as that can be sometimes. I find it less excruciating these days. It's plenty, yeah. Just do some movement and stop and see how it feels, and then maybe do some more.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you.